Hey, it's Felicia Pride, head honey and honey child, and host of It's Good Over Here. Many of you may know, but I started as an author before transitioning to writing for the screen. And all my life, I wanted to write romance, which I've been able to do in my film and TV career. Shout out to Really Love and Tender and Look Back at It in Bel Air. But I never got a chance to do so as an author until now. I'm so excited to announce the upcoming release of my first romance novella entitled Come Close. It's also Honey Child's first foray into publishing fiction. You can pre-order Come Close now on Amazon. Here's a quick synopsis. After years toiling in Hollywood, Amaya Ellis is finally directing her first feature film in her hometown, unexpectedly reuniting her with Kyrie Tate, her high school sweetheart, whom she hasn't seen in decades. He wasn't just the one, he was the standard. But ambitions, dreams, and the world got in the way, and their relationship fell apart. They lost touch, moved on, or so they thought. As fate brings them together, they relive their own movie of their past love and find themselves creating a new story. What would you tell your younger self? Young Demetria, she got a blog, she's in New York. What would you tell her?
Young Demetria tells me what to do.
Oh.
I operate off of what my this sounds crazy. Let me explain it though. I operate kind of off of what my 20-year-old self would do. So at 20, I was living in London. I was getting ready to graduate college. And when you're very young, if you've had like a nice life with a support system, right? Everything seems possible. And you don't think about the limitations of, well, there's money and there's logistics and there's like moving here and doing this.
Welcome, honeys in training, and all of those who love us. I'm Felicia Pride, writer, filmmaker, and founder of media and production company Honey Child, where we tell stories that speak to Black women of a certain age with love. And you are tuning into one of our things, It's Good Over Here. It's Good Over Here is your ticket to the delicious adventures in Honeyland. It's a celebration of how good it can get on the other side of 40 across career, life, and love. In each episode, we offer inspiration and insight on aging boldly because, honey, it is good over here. Hey, honeys, I am so super excited about today's guest. Dubbed the Black Carrie Bradshaw by the Washington Post, my guest today, Demetria L. Lucas, is an award-winning author, journalist, media personality, and now a global citizen. Currently, you can listen to her thoughts on everything from pop culture to politics on her podcast, Ratchet and Respectable, and watch her global travels on Instagram under the hashtag #SeeSomeWorld. But if you know, like I know, Demetria goes way back on the media scene. She was an OG blogger. Raise your hand if you followed AbelleInBrooklyn.com like I did, or if you were glued to her insanely popular advice column, Ask Demetria. She was also relationships editor at Essence, appeared on the Bravo show Blood, Sweat, and Heels, and is the author of 2 books, including Abelle in Brooklyn, The Go-To Guide for Living Your Best Single Life, a memoir about dating in her 20s. And I've got to say, a lot has changed since then. So I'm so excited to get into your adventures now as a honey in your life and as your career, especially living abroad. Thank you for joining us, Demetria.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I mean, first of all, I feel like you are just living this life that like, I'm envious. I can't lie. I'm looking at you. I'm like, at work and you're like traveling the world and you're eating wonderful foods and so I want to know how you even came to the point where you were like, you know what? I want to change things. I want to live a different type of life. Like, what was that moment for you where you just decided, I'm going to start traveling? And also it sounded like maybe there wasn't a plan. I don't know. But I would just love to know, what was that moment for you? You were like, you know what? I'm going to switch some things up, shake some things up in my life.
It was COVID. Like, it was the big life changer, like it is for so many people. I had lived abroad when I was my senior year of college. I studied abroad. I lived in London. I was there for 5 months, and I wanted to take an adult leap year. And by adult, I meant like I was going to graduate from college and take the year off before I started working. That was a pipe dream. I had no funding. I had no job, but it was always something that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And, in the middle of COVID, when everything's in disaster and, everyone's laid off and all of those things, like I'm sitting trapped in the house, like I'm afraid to go outside. Right. I'm Uber eating like every day.
Girl.
So I was like, I what are some things that I always wanted to do? Like, what are the things that I've just, I was on a grind all through my 20s, like work
Yeah.
wise. Same thing with like 30s, life is up and down. And so I'm trying to like refigure some things out. And I was like, what are all the things that I wanted to do? And I literally made a list. And one of them was like, I wanted to live abroad again. And I went through the short list of places that I had been that I loved being. My best friend, Davita, was doing trips to Ghana. And so I was
Mhm.
always going out there to visit her. And I loved it. Every time I went, I would never want to leave. I would always extend my passport or my visa as long as I could. And I was like, you know what? That's actually where I want to be. And I started telling people, I was like, I think I want to move to Ghana. Um, and no one really freaked out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it was just like, well, okay, like you always over there, like that makes sense. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait, so maybe this isn't as crazy as I think it sounds. Like maybe this is
Yeah.
just like, a thing. And so like I did it. And then I didn't want to come home. And now it's been like 2.5 years.
That's the wild thing to me. It's like, I think sometimes the big obstacle is just to do it. Right. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we overplan, we overanalyze, we do all the things. I think that's where I'm at. I'm like, I think you're just going to have to just make the change, whatever change that is. So talk about then, what was the transition period like, right? Like, how long did it take for you to feel settled? Because I've read some of your stories about like just some of the differences, but what was the transitional period like?
It was actually relatively easy once I embraced it, because just like what you said, the idea of doing something is sometimes harder than the actual execution. So
Mm-hmm.
wrapping my head around like, okay, I'm going to break my lease. I'm going to pack up all my stuff. I'm going to ship it back across the country. I'm going to put all my stuff in my parents' basement. Like, wait, what? Like, you're just going to dismantle? Like, I spent a lot of time trying to rebuild this life, move to
Mm,
LA from DC,
yes.
rebuilding this life. And then like 2.5 years later, I'm going to decide like, I don't want to live it anymore. And I want to like
Mm.
do something else. It seemed to me to be, this was a hurdle I had to get over. It could seem like flaky. And
Mm.
I'm like the stable friend, like my New York apartment, I'd lived there for like 17 years,
Mhm,
And I,
mhm.
I made a big point of like, setting up a life in LA and putting all these structures in place and building the podcast and building a merchandising brand for the podcast and the speaking engagements and really infiltrating the infrastructure of LA, which is not easy.
At all. It
And
is
then it's
not
like, would you
easy.
just going to give it up?
Right.
Well, yeah. But once I leaned into the idea of it, like once I sent that like deposit on the apartment, because overseas you got to pay like the full lease in advance. Like once
Wow.
I sent the check and I was like, all right, like we committed, we're not going to just throw this money away.
Right.
So sent the check, bought a ticket, emailed the leasing office, and literally from there everything just flowed. I was like, there's just a list of things that had to be done, and I
Yeah.
gave myself, like ample 6 months to figure out like how to get it all done before I got on a plane and left the country indefinitely.
I think that's so interesting, the flaky piece, because I feel like I have definitely worried about that because I have been a little all over the place in my early artistic years. So that idea, especially when you get to a certain age, right? There's this
Yeah.
expectation of stability, right? Like, and then you learn stability is an illusion, right? But the
Definitely.
idea that we kind of almost prevent ourselves from doing things from these labels that we put on ourselves. So I love that you were able to work through that. So what are some of the things you've learned about yourself living abroad?
Like once you've like navigated, I don't know, being literally on the other side of earth with really nothing more than like a cell phone, a credit
Yeah.
card, and a passport.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. And you figure out life. Like I get from one place to the next,
Yeah.
like I maintained my safety, like I nourish myself, I stay alive, I drink my water, I go to the gym. Like that's really like the fundamental things that you need.
Yeah.
But like I can figure out anything on my cell phone or with Google Translate. I can go to countries where I don't speak the language. I can read Portuguese, interpreting it to Spanish, back to English. Like you just figure it out,
Yeah.
like when it's just you to rely on. You ain't got no backup plan. So
Yeah.
you just do it.
Yeah. So, because you're not just, I mean, you are spend most of the time in Ghana, but you're in Ghana, but you're still traveling around the world. So talk about like some of the favorite places, favorite things that you've seen, that you've done over these last 2.5 years.
Oh, wow. Um, I know what I like to do. So every place I go, I really, really, really enjoy. Like I extensively research everything, but I also have like a set things I like. So like I like beaches, I like architecture, I like wandering around museums endlessly. I like beautiful cities. I like to walk around with like my camera and pretend I'm a professional photographer and take thousands of pictures. Like that's a day for me, walking around in sweatpants, just taking pictures. So like every place I go is amazing. But some of the places that have blown my mind, Sao Tome and Principe. It's like a little island off the coast of Ghana. It's 2.5 hours away.
Wow.
I had never heard of this country.
I've never heard of this place.
I met this woman in Ghana. She has a book called Sex Lives of African Women.
Yes.
Boom. Okay. So in that book, she interviews
someone. I'm wondering if it's still available. I need to check on it.
Girl, I asked her too, because I was like, girl, this is good. But there was a woman she interviewed from Sao Tome, and I was like, where the fuck is Sao Tome? So I looked it up, and I was like, oh my God, it's like Tulum meets Bali off like the coast of Africa. Like what? Yeah. So when I first moved to Ghana, like I had a list of places I wanted to go, and that was the first place I went. This tiny little island. It's kind of like where the Portuguese set up the whole concept of chattel slavery as it's practiced in America. They just got out of slavery / colonization in 1975. What? So I met this woman who looked like she could be my sister, and she's talking to me about like how her mom and dad worked the plantations for free. Like I was like, wait, so colonization? And so she was like, slavery. And I was like, but no, colonization. And she was like, is there a difference? And I was like, wait. And I was like, so they worked in the coffee fields, but like they got paid. And she was like, with what? So yeah. But it's very, what's the word? They're 40 years out of slavery. Like
that's wild.
50 years. Yeah. It's wild. So like you go places and you still see like the standing farms and plantations. Like when the Portuguese pulled out, like they literally just left all their tools scattered around and people didn't have use for them anymore. So they're just sitting there. Like, and because it's not America, you can just like walk in and like take pictures and just walk around and nobody's like, hey, stop that. Like just.
Right.
Yeah.
Acting on your ideas is a form of self-love. And when I decided to write the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal, it was with you in mind. Storytellers with stories inside of you that you need to get out into the world. But life, fear, uncertainty has a way of leaving us stuck. But no more. It's time to reclaim our creative practice and get unstuck. The Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal can help you get back on creative track. 30 days of dynamic prompts, exercises to stimulate creativity, alongside motivational quotes, journal pages, and more. If you're ready to create again, get your copy of the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal today at creativecomeback.com. That's creativecomeback.com. Because it's never too late to become the artist you always wanted to be. I mean, Portugal has slid under the radar as being one of the biggest colonizers.
Like y'all came up with this. Like, yeah.
That's so fascinating. So it's like, I mean, See Some World is such a apropos hashtag and title for what you're doing, but also like the things that you're learning, the things that you're seeing. Like this is, I can't even. I don't know how you quantify or qualify how life-changing this all sounds. And do you think of it that way?
No. It's just life. You know how people have an idea of like, you know, you move to LA and you work in TV and it's just this big, fascinating, special thing. And it's like, yeah, the award shows are, but everything else is just, you know, like I'm living overseas and I'm gallivanting and I'm going to museums and I'm meeting amazing people and I'm seeing really gorgeous things. But I also have to like go to the store and like buy water, you know? Right. I still have to buy like fresh t-shirts. I still got to like air dry my clothes. And sometimes I put them out and it rains overnight and everything's drenched. Like it's still, yeah.
Still life.
It's still life. Yeah.
Now, how are you making it work then? You know, because you talked about hustling a lot in your 20s and 30s. Have you been able to slow down? Is the hustle mentality still there? Have your thoughts around work changed?
No. I do less. I do the podcast as I'm traveling. And that's like my main thing. Every Tuesday, every Friday, rarely miss an episode. I have a lot of, if we're being transparent, guilt around not doing more. Because like I'm a Gen X Black girl, like I'm raised that like, you know, your worth is in your productivity and your accolades and your salary and all of those things. So when I'm choosing to go gallivant, when I'm choosing to go do a beach day or a museum day, as opposed to, I don't know, slaving at my laptop producing something, I do have guilt around that. Yeah.
No, I feel that so deeply. And I think that's the thing. Like, it's also the uncoupling of the identity. Cause I'm with you. Like, okay, I've spent 10 years building this life in LA and have rose the ranks in Hollywood. But I'm like, this shit ain't it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, then how do you, first of all, like I spent this time, and then uncouple your identity. And also I'm right there with you of like the guilt around what I'm supposed to be doing, especially when you are a talented Gen X Black girl, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, you got this talent, you got this drive, you made it this far. People know your work and are expecting your work. Like there's a lot to be considered around that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there's also, because, you know, this is a podcast for, you know, women of a quote unquote certain age.
Yeah.
I think that also playing into that is the idea that like there's a limited time left for me as a woman, especially as like a public figure. Because once you hit a certain age, like people, you are allegedly become invisible and no one cares. And I'm like, I don't feel it yet, but like, does that happen? Like, when does it happen? Like, do I hit this professional wall at some point? And here I am, like, you know, gallivanting as opposed to.
But child, but I'm telling you, we love watching it over here. Go gallivant some more. Like I think that's what's interesting about, especially how we classify the work here at Honey Child. Like, one of our big, major, very lofty goal is to help Black women get free. Yeah. And you gallivanting is the work. Do you know what I mean? I know that we like to define the work in certain ways, but the impact that it is having on people watching you, like this Black woman seems so free and gallivanting, is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about these group trips. You're organizing group trips for Black women who want to explore Ghana, which I need to get in on. Talk about these group trips and the experiences that these Black women are having. And it seems like a lot of them are honeys too. Talk about these experiences that they're having.
So I do group trips under the hashtag See Some World. And I do it in conjunction. The same bestie who, you know, I was like, oh, I went on the trips to her with Ghana. And I was like, yeah, I'm living here. And now she lives there too. She moved last year. Yeah. So she and I do these group trips to Ghana. And then we just started doing them our first one is in April, to Cape Town.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we joked about this literally the other day. They're not life coaching. There's no wellness. I'm not trying to improve your mental health. There is no therapy aspect to this. It is gallivanting. I am inviting you to come over. Like I post all these pictures on Instagram and I have like these great experiences. And I intentionally use the word gallivant when I talk about, you know, the things that I do, because sometimes there is no rhyme or reason. Like we just outside and we just experiencing and enjoying, and that's it. So I invite groups of women to come over and just experience and enjoy and see. So we do a little museum, we do a little history, but we also do a lot of club and a lot of fine restauranting, a lot of beaching, a lot of boating. Like we like those things. We like beautiful views. Yeah. We like good food, and we like to just chill. You know? But they've always been like really amazing groups of women. One of the things that I'm really blessed with, the community that I've been able to build with See Some World, is just like this amazing group of women who love travel, who love art and architecture and books and culture. And they like the same things I do. So it's very easy to be like, you know what do I want to do? I think they might like it too. Let's do that. Yeah. But yeah, we throw out the trips and they sell out in like 4 minutes.
I know.
People curse me out for the next 3 months until we announce the next trip. Repeat. Yeah.
I mean, I want to talk a little bit about that. Just See Some World, how that came about. Because it didn't seem like you didn't have the intention of like, I'm going to start this new brand. You know what I mean? Like this was, you went to for yourself and then this came out of it. And that's what I have really admired about your career is your projects feel so organic to your life. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about See Some World and how that came about, but also just your connection with social media and how you've been able to continuously build community around the things that you enjoy.
Yeah. See Some World started very randomly. Like it was literally just some hashtag I used. I was standing on a boulder in Cape Town. I think we just left a nude beach. I was covered in the photo, just FYI. But I was standing on this boulder. You know, Cape Town's got all those mountains and those beautiful views.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I was in awe. And the person I was with took a picture, and I was literally taking a picture of the mountains, and they took a picture of me, and I was like, oh, See Some World. And I used it as a hashtag, and I just, randomly started using it. And I didn't really think about it until I was scrolling one day, maybe a couple years later, and I saw somebody use the hashtag See Some World. And I didn't know the person. And I was like, wait, where'd this come from? And I clicked on it, and it's 55,000 people had used the hashtag. And I was like, wait, what? But it didn't really become a official brand or anything until I actually moved abroad. And then I was like, oh, okay, let me be intentional about categorizing this and, obviously trademarking it and all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But no, it feels organic because it is. But I think everything that I've done career-wise that has been successful, I'm trying to fill a void. There's something that I would like to see. There's something that I would like to do. And then I sit around and complain about it for a while. Like, why is no one doing X? Why is no one doing Y? And then someone points out well, why don't you do it, writer? Complaining that there's no content about this, that. Well, why don't you write it? Because that's what you do, right? So, yeah.
I mean, because you've been in the game for a long time. What do you what do you contribute your longevity to?
I would say the same thing, filling voids.
Yeah.
There's always a new one popping up, unfortunately. But there's always something that I want to do. And it's if no one else is doing it, why am I not doing it? Or if somebody's doing something and I'm like, oh, I think they should be doing this, they should be doing Y. So let me try to do it and see if that works. And all of it doesn't work. Yeah. The stuff that you see is the successful stuff. There's plenty of things that I've tried that, just didn't hit, just didn't work, or maybe it worked, but it didn't work for me. So I didn't have the enthusiasm for it. But everything that I do, I'm very passionate about. I did a Bell in Brooklyn. I started when I did it. I did it for years for free. I never made a dime off of, there was no ads, there was nothing. Yeah. I wasn't doing it for posting. I was doing it because I was a freelance writer in New York, and I covered entertainment and hip hop. And so when I started wanting to talk about relationships and stuff, because I was a book editor in relationships at Harlequin of all places. Oh, and exactly.
Now I'm remembering this part of your career.
Yeah, I was like, there's several careers before you get to even a Bell in Brooklyn and Essence even.
Yeah.
But no one would hire me. They were like, well, I was the girl who interviewed all the rappers on the way to jail, like Benny Siegel and Styles P. Styles P, when he first got out, Benny Siegel, a week before he got in, I'm asking him, are you a drug addict, Benny? And he's like, no, why would you say that? And I was like, well, how often do you do drugs? And he was like, twice a day since I was 15. And I was like, sure, let's go with that. Let's, you're not an addict. Okay. But that was my lane. Right. Yeah. And so when I was like, yeah, I want to talk about dating and relationships, they were like, no, that's not what you do. You talk about this. So continue to talk about it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll start this blog, and that'll be my outlet to talk about the things that I want to talk about. And then, a whole new career pops up based off that.
Yeah. I mean, and then you've done the reality show. You kind of were an influencer before there was a name for the.
I think that's hilarious.
I mean, and so to see you still doing your thing and sharing your thoughts and just being very, very present in this new media landscape that's always changing. Right. So you've kind of been in front of it with the podcast and even the way that you manage social media. That's huge. That's huge.
Thank you.
So what do you feel like is next? I wouldn't even say next, but untapped for you from a career standpoint.
I don't
'Cause
know.
you've had movies, you've had books, you've been on TV, like you've done so much. Are there things that you feel like you haven't done yet?
I am working on the See Some World coffee table book.
Mm,
I am combing through something like 140,000 photos
wow.
between my phone and my hard drive about the travels and such.
I was going to
Um,
ask if we were going to be seeing and hearing about. So that's beautiful about this.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really challenging. I take photos. I don't consider myself a photographer. So this is very much out of my comfort zone
Mhm.
to sort of to showcase, it's one thing when it's like, Instagram, you can put on filters and all this other stuff. And I
Yeah.
mean, I guess you can Photoshop things, but I want it to be raw and a representation. Like if somebody goes someplace that I posted in my book, I want it to look like what they saw as
Yeah.
opposed to like, wait, this ain't it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
So
trying to do now.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. Like, what do you think would classify you as a photographer?
I don't know. Like I reached out to a couple of friends who actually are professional photographers, like have agencies and the whole nine. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing XYZ. And they're like, yeah, do it. And I was like, but I'm not like a professional photographer. Like you're a professional photographer. You don't have a book. He's like, because I don't want to do a book. But like you want to do a book. So do it. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. But he was like, do it. Just do it. Just do it. Yeah. He's like, just do it.
Just
And I
do
was
it.
like, okay, sure. All right.
Yes.
But yeah, it's something new. It's out of my comfort zone. So like I will apply, all the knowledge that I have, and I will hire professionals to, make
Mhm.
sure it's of quality and good work and things, but it's outside of my comfort zone.
And I love that. I mean, I think that's the great thing about continuing to push the boundaries of things. And you talk about you ain't working, girl. What are you talking about?
I mean, this is I'm not suffering. I'm not laboring, yes, but I'm not suffering through work right now. But I am, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's where I want to be, less suffering.
Yes.
The intense deadlines is what's getting to me at this point. Cause I'm thinking about, I'm like, I've been on intense deadlines for 25 years. You know what I mean? Like from my journalism days. So I'm like, that's the thing is hard for me now, is the intense deadlines that it has to get done. I'm like, what if I don't feel like it in this moment?
Yeah, but we freelancers though, like, you don't work, you don't eat.
You don't
like,
work,
you eat what you kill. You eat what you kill.
What you kill. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that. So I want to talk about PG County a little bit. Because I had a show at Netflix. They just passed on. It was in development for 4 years about 4 women who live in a gated community in Bowie. And I just feel like PG County.
Is that called Woodmore?
I feel like PG County is such a specific place that deserves to be on screen. It deserves many things, but it definitely deserves to be on screen because I just feel like it's a very specific place for Black people. So I just want to talk about a little bit about PG and how it kind of shaped you. Because I know in between your world travels, you'll go back home to PG. How has your relationship to PG County changed? But I want to talk about PG because it deserves to be talked about.
Yeah, PG County is like the embodiment of ratchet and respectable. Like when I go out in the world, like people sometimes don't understand, like, well, why would you refer to yourself as ratchet, or why would you claim respectable? Because respectability politics and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, like you miss it. PG County I'll give you the greatest example. So I came back and like last year and I wanted a grill. And so it's one of those things. It's on the list of like, these are things that I've always wanted. Like I didn't realize how expensive they were. And I was like, I have a little extra change now. Like I want a grill. So one of my friends recommends me to this guy. And I think that I'm going to have to go to New York to get the grill. That was the other part too, right? Because New York or Atlanta. So he was like, no. He's from New York. He's like, I actually go to PG County to this grill man.
There's a grill man in PG County?
He's like, everyone you see with the grill in the whole like DC metropolitan area gets their grill from one person.
Wow.
Rich Grills. So I go to Rich, right? And we're like, I'm looking around the shop and there's like a Louis Vuitton golf bag, right? And I was like, what? Like, does the grill man play golf? Like, indeed he does. So the grill man also has it's grills in the front and it's tattoos in the back. So while he's like setting me to like, like do my teeth, he asked me, or he's having a conversation with the tattoo guy. And they're talking about like investments and stocks. And I was like, and then they start talking about some TV show. And one of them is talking about the protagonist. And I was like, where am I? Like, what is happening? So the girl man comes back over to me and he's like, he's giving me the price of everything. And so he says, Demetria, which no one ever pronounces my name right on the first try. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, that's Greek, right? And I was like, how do you know that, grill man? And he was like, oh, well, my master's is in Greek mythology. And I was like, I love this place. I love this place. So I was like, well, he was like, you've been to Greece, right? Because like, I Googled you and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I actually haven't been to Greece. And I was like, have you been to Greece? And he was like, yeah, like I studied abroad there. Like, and he starts naming like all these islands and how he would like take a canoe to go to church. Cause like where he lived was a different island than his church, but he doesn't swim. And I was like, what? But it's like the most PG County experience you'll ever have. And like in the middle of this, like Rick Ross is like blasting. And everyone looks at me and thinks I'm like, this super bougie girl from PG County. But like I'm quoting all because my favorite Rick Ross album, like Maybach music. Like it's great.
I was like, first of all, the golf bag is what I love, and then a whole master's in Greek mythology.
Yes. He's also in the middle of getting his PhD. And I was like, yo, I love this dude. Like you are everything PG County is. Yeah.
That is the best description I've heard of PG County yet. Yes. And that's why it needs to be on screen. I'm like, exactly. We need to talk more about PG. And also just hearing you tell that story reminded me like, that's what it is. You are fantastic at storytelling.
Thank you.
Like that, the way that you told that story was like, okay, that's like the special sauce that you have. What is your relationship to stories and storytelling and in your life and in your work?
I read. I read constantly. Both my parents are like avid readers. And when I was a kid, like my mom, I tell the story sometimes. My mom left out a copy, and it sounds crazy now. She left out a copy of Waiting to Exhale because every Black woman in the world was reading Waiting to Exhale in like late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And so I would go to the beauty shop with my mom. Everyone's talking about this book nonstop. Terry McMillan in this book. So I picked up the book and started reading it. And like I sat on the couch like one day, like all day long, and read Waiting to Exhale. And like, I didn't quite get it, like I don't know the understanding like women in their 30s dating, right. But like, I know good story. Right. And I asked my mom later and I was like, why would you let a child read Waiting to Exhale? Like, who does that? And so she was like, you were quiet. You were reading. What am I supposed to say? Like, I'm supposed to stop my child who likes to read?
Good point.
Yeah. But I also say this, like, Terry McMillan was huge and Spike Lee was huge and Omar Tyree. There was so many Black storytellers.
Yes.
And I also thought about this the other day because I went to an event at the Kennedy Center and Rakim and Big Daddy Kane performed. I didn't realize when it was happening because you're in the midst of it. I'm growing up in like a golden age of Black storytelling.
Yes.
So whether it's books or it's magazines or it's hip hop, which I listen to constantly, it's all story. It's all wordplay. It's all structure. It's all how do you keep people informed and entertained and elevated all at the same time, even when it seems like you're just telling like a simple story about quote and unquote Black life. We call it simple because it's like regular. It's not Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But the themes are kind of the same.
I mean, I say all the time, before I knew Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, I knew Queen Latifah and Big Daddy Kane.
Boom.
Like Big Daddy Kane, first of all, he was so fine. I mean,
girl,
he was the
I
first
yelled Big Daddy when he came out. I was like, Big Daddy! Big Daddy!
Yes. Where my love affair with chocolate began. And just like, he was so smooth, but he had that voice and the efficiency of storytelling in hip hop. Like, we don't talk enough about how you can tell the whole story in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned Omar Tyree. I think about Omar, Eric Jerome Dickey. Like, I feel like there was a time where Eric Jerome Dickey saved my life. You know what I mean? I was like fresh out of college and depressed and sad at my little job, trying to figure out my life. And I just ran through his books. Yeah. And it was just something about the black relationships and friendships and the storytelling. So I feel like there's an opportunity to talk more about the plethora of storytelling that we have for people, for sure. Yeah. For sure. I love that. All right. What are you looking forward to in the next decade of your life?
I have no clue. Living it, surviving, being alive.
Yes.
I don't know. Like, my dad asked me like the other day, he's like, what is your 5-year plan? And I was like, and just like walked out the room. I don't know. I'm traveling to Belize on Saturday. And then after that, I have no idea what I'm doing with like the rest of my life. Like, that's Like I kind of go with the flow. Like people, I say sometimes I was like, I'm living off like vibes, vibes, energy. And like, I think tequila, is my of choice right now. But like, I'm literally, that's what I'm doing.
And that wasn't always the case, right?
No.
It sounds like you had a plan, you were stable, you knew next year is going to be this. So that's being able to transition into the uncertainty and being okay and comfortable in the uncertainty is a big thing.
That took work. Yeah, for real.
Yeah. What would you say to honeys who want to move to another country or want to do that thing they've been wanting to do, but that fear is still there? What would you tell them?
Do it scared.
Mm-hmm.
Do it scared. I put everything in place when I went to Ghana, right? Like I'd been to the country multiple times. I knew the city. My best friend is from there. She had friends there. Like I was in her friend network.
Mm-hmm.
I had other people that I knew outside of that were there. There was a community of expats. Like I was, tapped into like the American Black Girl Network. You got to be specific. I did all the things that were quote and unquote right. Like I saved a ton of money for almost more than a year as like an emergency fund. Cause like, what if the thing that I'm working on goes away? I'm trying to be stuck overseas, broke, but I also don't want to come back right away. I did all the right things and still I was just like terrified, like just, like you're moving to a whole nother country. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you did it anyway. And look at you now.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so let's go into our segment we call Pleasure Principle. Okay. 2 of our words at Honey Child are desire and pleasure, and we define them very expansively. Anything that you want and anything that makes us feel good. So how do you practice self-compassion?
How do I practice self-compassion? I tell myself I did my best. And that's really hard for me because like I have perfectionist tendencies. I mean, always fall short as every perfectionist does, but like I'm striving I want things to be a very specific, certain way. And of course it never turns out that way. But I did my best. Like I've never, even in my most like terrible failure moments, like I never set out to fail. I never set out to fuck up. I mean, I might have, but but I did my best.
That's huge.
And sometimes I just have to chant that because, until you believe it.
Yes, yes, yes. What does pleasure seeking look like for you?
That could be anything from sleep.
One of my favorite things.
What does pleasure seeking look like for me? Right now, it's thinking of the end game. Pleasure seeking, self-care, like often we define it as, I don't know, you got your hair done, you went to a spa, you went to a masseuse, something like that. But it's also shoring up your stuff, right? So like registering for my Obamacare before the deadline so that I'm insured now that I'm back in the country, you know? So God forbid something happens, I'm not bankrupted by a medical bill. Paying your taxes on time. Getting your teeth
your taxes on time, honey. You know, as a freelancer.
As a freelancer, I was like, wait, you want what? From where? From who and from where? When? Not gonna be able to do it. Michelle Obama, I'm not gonna be able to do it. You need me to do it. I ain't gonna be there. I ain't gonna be there. But no, like taking care of your ish is a form of pleasure to me because it's, I have anxiety. Like when you're, you're in the country, well, I'm back in the country and I don't have health care. Like I can't get sick here, so things like that.
I love that.
Adulting.
Tell us one of your deepest desires at this age.
What are my deepest desires? More time. Because there's so much that I want to do. And my life in many ways revolves around weather and seasons. So I only do Ghana at a certain part of the year because it goes into rainy season and it gets like, when it's like Africa hot, like in general, it's okay. But like February, March, April in Ghana is Africa hot. So I can't do like 100-degree days. Like I gotta go. So I go to South Africa because the weather is better. But then in June, the weather gets bad. So I come back to the States or I go to Europe. I would like to be in Asia right now, or Asia later this year, actually. and it's motivating me to get all my work done so I can go to Asia for the weather, trying to avoid monsoon season in different countries. But it's motivating me to do all the stuff that I need to do now so that I can enjoy my desires, my wants, later this year. So my desire is to go to Asia. I want to gallivant through Asia for 6 months. That's my current desire.
All right. And then our Honey Reflections. This is rapid style. The name of our show is called It's Good Over Here. So tell us what's something that's getting better for you right now.
Something that's getting better for me right now. It ain't my tolerance. That's low.
My tolerance now is
I was like, that's low. What's getting better? It's not my metabolism, it's not my eyesight. I got going to see my doctor.
It's not the metabolism.
It's not my metabolism. I got to work really hard on that. What is getting better? My discernment. My discernment. And listening to my discernment.
Is that for everything, people, situations, across the board?
That's across the board. That's friendships, that's work stuff, that's relationships, that's everything. I mean, everyone, like you meet people and they say the right things and they can do X for you. And again, across the board. Yeah. The red flags, like we all see them, but you're like, no, like I'm overthinking it. Like, well, he didn't actually say that, but I have like this feeling about it, but something like that. And it's like, no, my reality is reality.
Yes.
So even if it's not, I think it is, and I'm not comfortable. And so I'm not going to be able to do it. It's my new thing, but I ain't going to be there. Not able to do it. Not going to be there. Yeah.
What would you tell your younger self? Young Demetria, she got a blog. She's in New York. What would you tell her?
Young Demetria tells me what to do.
Oh.
I operate off of what my this sounds crazy. Let me explain it though. I operate kind of off of what my 20-year-old self would do. So at 20, I was living in London. I was getting ready to graduate college. And when you're very young, if you've had like a nice life with a support system, right? Everything seems possible. And you don't think about the limitations of, well, there's money and there's logistics and there's like moving here and doing this. Like I'm going to, do this by 25 and I'll be, a millionaire and blah, blah, blah. Like everything seems possible. So I try to think from a place of what seems possible, unlimited, without the limit. Yeah, unlimited. Yeah.
I love that because life starts to settle in and I even think just about play, right? As children, how we played and life starts to just settle in and like play. We can't play no more. You know what I mean? Like, so I love that. Okay.
Like you ask kids what they want to be. Like, I want to be an astronaut. But then you ask adults, like, unless you're, currently at NASA, nobody thinks it's possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And then lastly, I have actually one more question after this, but what do you swear by as a honey? It could be beauty, health, rituals, routines.
Peace.
Ooh.
Peace. You will not disturb my peace. You might disturb my sleep, but you will not disturb, my peace. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, above everything.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Demetria, for being with us today. Is there anything that we should be looking out for, any upcoming projects, or where folks can find you?
Folks can find me at Demetria L. Lucas. That's the website, that's the Instagram, that's the threads, that's all the major platforms. There's always something coming down the pipeline, but follow one of those platforms and I'll be soon to announce whatever it is.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you all, honeys, for tuning in to this episode of It's Good Over Here. Thank you, Demetria. This was fantastic.
Thank you, my love.
It's Good Over Here is a Honey Child thing. Honey Child is a media company that speaks to Black women 40 plus, honeys as we like to call them, across audio, digital, film, TV, books, and more. Don't forget to follow Honey Child on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at It's Honey Child. And visit our website at honey-child.com. For bonus content and other exclusive Honey Dip stories, subscribe to our Substack at yeshoney.substack.com. That's yeshoney.substack.com. Until next time, honeys, it's good over here. You coming? Hey, honeys, have you signed up for our newsletter? A Taste of Honey delivers right to your inbox bi-weekly and is full of honey news, conversation, and shenanigans. Sign up now at honey-child.com. That's honey-child.com.